Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And as always, hello, Morné. And then we have beautiful Bryce and Stephanie who are joining us again. Welcome, guys. Wonderful to have you back. But before we go ahead with you, I just want to give a final shout out to our sponsor for the past 6 weeks. That has been Marushka.com with her amazing range of linen clothing for men and women, and a lot more coming up. It's such an incredible, really, I have quite a few items in my cupboard, and it is an amazing product. It is high vibrating linen. Linen comes from the hemp plant, which is the highest vibrating of all the plants. So it's earth friendly, human friendly, animal friendly, and she's an amazing designer, creator. Everything comes from her inspiration within. So if you haven't already, please check out her website. And I know that for first-time buyers as well, there's nice discounts and things. And Morné will put the links in the description area. And then halfway through our chat today, we will show our little video again of the sixth video, which I've loved seeing, I have to say. It's really cool. So I've known her for many years, and it's just amazing to see that I have friends who are that awesome. Yay. Okay. Well, over and above that, we have with us, as I said, Bryce and Stephanie, and of course, ever faithful Morné. And we are discussing today the E in the BITE model, right, which is the emotional control. So over to you, ladies. Thank you so much.
Stephanie, I'll let you take it away.
All righty. Hello, everybody. So yes, we're doing the E in the BITE. And so, Morné, I don't know if you want to pull up on the screen real quick for everyone so we can just go over it real quick, and then we will...
Should we just remind people what the BITE model is quickly? I just kind of got
absolutely. Yeah. So this was created by someone who was investigating cults, and so
he was in a cult. He was in the movies. Yeah,
it's a model, and it's like the more you check off on this list of the BITE model, the deeper into cult activity it is. So it's used by, I believe, a lot of therapists to gauge and see just how like indoctrinated into a cult a person is. So it goes over, so the BITE was behavioral, the I was information control, the T was thought control, and now we're on E, which is emotional control.
This is the big one too. And it's not just, even though it's created for cult deprogramming, it's also, we see it in the media, we see it in institution, we see it in religion, just basic religion, we see it in the truther movement. There are people who are displaying these behavior tactics. It's anything to try to control you and control what you do and how you think. And so one thing I love about the BITE model is that it helps you as an individual check things off every day to make sure you're not being mind controlled, you're not being gaslit, you're not being put into a trance. And so that's why when I discovered the BITE model, I thought it was just genius. Because
bite-sized chunks, right? We get to understand it in bite-sized chunks. I think it's quite appropriate.
Yeah, and I think the emotional control is the creme de la creme, because
it's the doozy.
If you can control someone's emotions, you can control their cognitive dissonance. Yeah. You can get them to do things they wouldn't normally do. So this one's the big one, the emotional control.
So I'll just quickly go over all the different points here, and then we'll go over them one by one, okay? So we have instill irrational fears or phobias of questioning or leaving group, label some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful, or wrong, teach emotion stopping techniques to prevent anger or homesickness, promote feelings of guilt, shame, and unworthiness, shower you with praise and attention, otherwise known as love bombing, threaten your friends and family, shun you if you disobey or disbelieve, teach that there is no happiness or peace outside of the group. So we'll start off with this: instill irrational fears, phobias of questioning or leaving the group. And if at any point you hear my dog gnawing on her bone, just let me know and I will remove it from her, because she's just going to town on this thing right next to the speaker. So I guess
she's happy. She's happy.
Yeah, it's entertaining her. So yes, instill the irrational fears and phobias of questioning or leaving the group. We see this in a lot of different things. Again, my experience comes from the religious point of view, but it's in education. We're seeing it on media. We're seeing it in all sorts of places. So for me, where my experience comes from is instilling this irrational fear that I'm just somehow going to wind up in hell because I just am a human being and I'm of sin. So that's where my experience comes in. And yes, it did instill a very irrational fear in me, in which I think I've talked about this several times. I literally had a hard time driving from point A to point B in a car because I would start getting panic attacks that I was somehow going to get in a car accident and die and end up in hell. And so that really took a toll on my life. And my anxiety was always sky high. Bryce, I don't know if you want to take it over with any of your personal experiences or...
Well, yeah, I was thinking too. I mean, I know when I first started speaking out against the controllers, we'll say, I would get messages on Instagram from people that I knew in life, like friends, thanking me for speaking out because they weren't brave enough to say anything. You know, and so you see that even there with people who, and that's fine. Like, I get it, you know, especially if you have a business to run and you have, but that irrational, like people not feeling like they can speak up for what's right because they don't want to receive the backlash. You know, and that does happen. That happens with, you know, if you look at, because a lot of times with like cult leaders are people who instill these practices of the BITE model. They're what would be called a malignant narcissist, which as one, Dr. Romney, one of the psychiatrists I watch a lot on YouTube, talks about, malignant narcissism is like right turning that corner before you get into psychopathy. So some malignant narcissists might also be psychopaths, but what they do too is they create, as far as leaving the group, they create what they call a flying monkey. And this is coming from the Wizard of Oz, where the flying monkeys would do the witch's evil deeds. And so a lot of times with these group think projects, the minute somebody questions the group or questions the leader or questions the doctrine, all these other people within the group have already been brainwashed and brain controlled to then attack that person. And so you know, these, I don't want to even call them irrational fears to leave the group, because they are actually very rational. You know, you're going to get destroyed. You know, there's going to be a smear campaign. You know, there's going to be all this stuff done to destroy you if you back away or question anything that's going on with it. And this, again, we see this heavily with cults. We also see this within the fancy flu that we had. If anybody questioned that, including people who were trained in that field, I'm trying to be careful what I say, they got completely like canceled completely. It's, you know, so we're seeing it not just this is everywhere. We see this everywhere, you know. In a perfect world, we should live in a society where everybody's allowed to speak up and be heard and not be, I mean, you were telling me, Stephanie, I won't say the name of a channel, but there's a truther channel that someone like called in to kind of question something the speaker was saying. And he got so mad at this caller for calling in, he found her address and put her address up on the screen. That's called doxing. So people would go to her house and harass her. So we were even seeing this in the truther community as well, this behavior.
Yeah, that's when I left and stopped watching it, because I lost all respect, because that should not be happening. And was this for something that this person was questioning? It was back in July of 2021. And, but yeah, I mean, they're doing the same exact thing like that MSM would be doing. And yeah, I was going to bring up the whole, what you call the fancy flu thing. As a medical assistant, I can't tell you how much of the fear that they were instilling in even the workers. Oh, you got to be careful. You gotta put the thing on your face, or else you're gonna, you know, get sick and, you know, so deadly and all that kind of stuff. So before you start fearing things, you have to really take a step back and check in with yourself. They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to question it. So fear is a huge thing that they use.
What do you, I mean, I think everything, that brings us down is fear related anyway,
Yeah.
Fear would be covering literally every dark, shadowy emotion that there is, basically. But it's also, I agree with what you're saying, when you earlier in the conversation, it really is that emotional control. And I mean, also having grown up in a conservative society where my gifts were not seen as something that is from God. So all the time, that emotional manipulation, don't play with her, she does this, don't do that, that kind of, and that is coming from conditioning that goes back centuries just within the family. And it's never mind what's in the churches or anything else. I mean, that is really just something that we look at. And that's also about bullying. I think that is the same thing. It really is, it starts like that with kids at school or in the home or something. It really is bullying them because they might be different, or they might, invariably it's because they're different, isn't it? I mean, if you think about, excuse me, generally kids who get bullied on the playground, they're smaller, or they might be overweight, they might have red hair, they might have freckles. It's invariably someone who's different. They might have some kind of a physical disability. So there's a lot of that, and I think it's so important to be able to look at that already just coming from the home, right? Doesn't matter what the church or the politicians say about that. I mean, as parents, as siblings, I think it's so important just to be able to recognize that within the home, and just to be able to, if your kids are in class with, say, for example, a child who's different, invite that child home, make them realize it's nothing wrong with anyone or anything being different. I think that's where it begins. So when people are willing to conform to this narrative because they don't know any different, and the church says this and the church says that and the government says this. I mean, let's think about this. Isn't this ridiculous? Every single one of us in all of our countries, name each and every politician that we don't trust, and we can give you a myriad of reasons why we don't trust them. Yet we comply to government decisions, right? They just make these rules and we just comply, but we don't trust them, but we comply. I mean, how out of integrity, out of our own spiritual integrity is that, right? So it really begins with us teaching our kids and us re-looking at exactly these things. I think, how have we been affected by these manipulations and controls, whether it's in the home, whether it's from the school, whether it's from religion, whatever. But it's so important, and it's so subtle. All of these things are so subtle. You believe what I tell you, otherwise you're an outcast. And if you don't do what we tell you, you're an outcast. And it begins then. Of course, as life goes on, these energies just tend to strengthen and more situations like that rise up.
And it gets harder. It's hard to do the right thing. There was this poster when I was in elementary school that said, and I still remember it, what is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. And that's why we have a lot of veneration for whistleblowers, because they are going against this group think. They are going against this many generational indoctrination and trance people are put into. And so it's hard for people. And of course, with the whole like fear of the phobias, all that kind of stuff comes catastrophe thinking. That's a side effect of this trauma, is something called catastrophe thinking, that a lot of people who have gone through emotional abuse, mental abuse, whether it's from a cult or a person, end up with a hyperactive mind that is so riddled with anxiety that everything becomes a situation for a catastrophe. And that's no way to live. That's no way to live your life. But that's a side effect of these types of indoctrination, And so
I've not actually heard that term before, catastrophe thinking. But it really is so relevant because it's exactly, you know, it's so true, and it's such a good way to explain that, because it really is, you know, when you, as you say, have come from any abuse or violation of any sorts, you assume the worst. There's no trust, so you're already thinking the worst. You've got the worst case scenario going on in your head.
Yeah.
And it's interesting again, you know, but there again, it's also up to us to change our thinking.
Well,
You know,
and that's
we
why
have
I want to bring that up in case somebody, because when I went through my trauma therapy back in my early 30s, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know that's what I was doing. And the minute I was able to understand what that was, I was able to then start to heal it. I could pinpoint it. And that's another good thing about the BITE model. Again, that's why we wanted to show people, is because this is a great way to be able to kind of step outside of yourself for a moment and look at a situation you're in from an outsider's perspective to see what's actually happening to you in this moment. Because a lot of times what these controllers do is they turn people through these controlling tactics, these very sneaky controlling tactics. They turn people, the people they're puppeting, end up doing things they wouldn't normally do in their own sovereignty and their own that they feel shame for later. And so if people can start to understand what, I mean, we understand that there is mind control out there. We get that. We're learning more and more and more and more and more about it every day. But it's so prevalent. It's not just in these special families. It's not just in this one sector of society. It's literally everywhere. It's everywhere. And so that's why I have the BITE model on my refrigerator. Like, I think this is why everybody should know this, to be able to take authority over their own thoughts and actions and understand where they're perhaps being manipulated and they weren't aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also takes a toll on your physical health too, where when you're in that catastrophe thinking, that's a fight or flight type of thinking, you know, and once you're there, people often do stay there. So what starts to happen is your adrenaline is like on hyperdrive, and then it starts to actually create a lot of physical problems in your emotional life.
It always does, you know, the energy, I always say your energetics creates your genetics. That's kind of like a coin that I've phrased over the years. And it really is, because when you are in so much trauma and stress, in a constant state of fear, your adrenals, for starters, are overactive most of the time, right? So when you are in that constant state of, even if you're not getting beaten up, but, you know, it begins with a child, let's say with a dad coming home, and, you know, or and fearing what the ramifications of that may be.
Yeah.
And that then becomes the way that you live your life. It's called that whole pattern of you know, recreating that. So it's so important when we can actually get to this stage, and the information now is out there. Like, you know, having conversations like this to recognize where you as an individual have possibly been affected. We've all been affected by it on some level or the other. Some of us are just more conscious than the others around it, right? So the minute we can see that we are being manipulated, whether it's by my spouse, whether it's by my kids, whether it's by my parents, my boss, my whatever, the siblings, whatever the case might be, when you recognize that. But then it's also as important to recognize these people could not be manipulating you unless you are open to manipulation, right? It never just happens in one way. And this is where the responsibility, I think, for both people lies, or both parties or situations, you know, is that it's always a two-way street. If there's going to be a villain and there's going to be a victim, until we balance those scales properly. And once we've got that, when the alchemy occurs, and that's when this whole push-pull, if you will, then will dissolve itself. So it's very interesting. We have the power to change it. We really do. But it's good to observe and see.
I mean, if you're allowing any of this, there is some sort of wound within yourself that needs to be healed up, which is that's when we allow people to take we freely give our power away to others when we have those wounds within us. So that's where it's best to start doing that inner work and healing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what, you know, some people went from watching like Anderson Cooper on CNN to a truther on YouTube, and they just switched the leader. They didn't free themselves. They didn't, you know, what on this side of the table, we're saying, do your own research, have your own sovereignty, use your critical thinking skills. Don't repeat what we say just because we said it. Research what we say. You know, don't lionize somebody, especially if you don't know them personally. Don't hero worship. Like that's where this kind of gets diluted as well, because within these groups, they'll put somebody on a pedestal like they're the all-knowing being, right? And that becomes the leader. That's what we see with like David Koresh from the Branch Davidians. That's what we see with the Heaven's Gate people, with the moon. You know, they have one person that really controls everything. And so you have to be careful that you are not giving your power over, that there isn't a wound inside of you that isn't healed. And so you're allowing this person or this group to pull you in through that wound to make you feel special when they just need your energy to do whatever they're going to do. So it is your responsibility. That's correct to be like, no, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong, and I'm not going to be a part of this. And so yeah, that is your responsibility for sure. You have to save yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just want to add with the first leg of the irrational fears and phobias. For me, there's two quotes that for me it's like so true. First one is fear only fear itself. So if you have a phobia and you still think you're scared of spiders, think again. Maybe befriend the spider. Because if you stay in a state of fear, the controllers can manipulate. And you can
spiders are really gross.
Stephanie's afraid of spiders.
I have arachnophobia like no other, okay?
I'm not.
I've tried.
They are so gentle. They're so soft, so gentle. And then the other one was the height of arrogance. The height of arrogance is the thought of control. So we freak out if we lose. We think we have to control everything. That's ignorant thing. If we just let go and we're not in a state of fear, love guides us, source guides us, and the controllers can't take us, or we can't fall in those traps. So, and I know we like to have control. We think we want control, but we can't control because life happens. All you can control is how you respond each moment. So you can stay in a state of connection, but you can't control where it's, you know. So I think that to me is like two very important things to realize. It's like only fear itself, and don't be ignorant to think you can control everything. If stuff has to happen, but just go into it, move through it, or whatever you need to do with it. So then you can go through all these crazy.
I just wish God made. I just wanted God to make maybe spiders look like puppy dogs or something a little less gross.
But they do when you look at them. But they do when you look at them. They are so cute. They are
like
so cute.
Maybe like 4 legs instead of 8. You know, maybe like I don't know.
Well, maybe if you look at the symbolism of spider. In fact, I think Bryce, didn't you and I do a show a couple of months back on spider symbolism and the whole web of light. And it's really actually very beautiful when you're looking at the symbolism of spiders, because they really are masterful creators. I mean, they connect the web of light together, which is really our intuitive web, the way we communicate with each other. But there again, you can also get caught up, right? You can get caught up in the web. And I mean, if you just look at that Harry Potter, I think that movie, that last with that spider and the thing, that to me has to be the worst. So that's on the opposite side of it.
Yeah. But, I'll recommend Charlotte's Web. Go watch Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web. Yes. Why can't all spiders be like Charlotte's Web, where they talk to you and say, "I'm really not that scary. I'm friendly. I'm not going to bite you." I had a really grueling spider bite a few years ago, so I was in the hospital on that one.
That's what Shanti and I both had. That as but I save spider.
Transformation.
Yes, transformation when you get a spider bite.
And that was a very transformational year. 2012.
So they're your teacher. They're your teacher. They're that was a good thing that happened, you know. And I actually every morning there's always like a couple spiders in the shower. I pick them up and take them outside. Like I don't want my dog seeing them, because my dog will actually, like a little psychopath, will try to like play with them. And so I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So like a cat and mouse will try to play with them. But yeah. So, but you're right, Morné, like that. It's nothing to, you have nothing to fear but fear itself. Fear is false evidence appearing real. You know.
Yeah, and it's also a teacher sometimes. So fear is not always the negative thing. It's a teacher.
And fear, and having courage to do something, someone that's brave, it's not that they don't feel fear. It's that they feel fear and they do it anyway. Because they do the right thing. Absolutely. Knowing that it's going to be hard. But that's the definition of courage and bravery, is to be able to look that fear in the face and say, no, I'm going to do this anyway, because what is right is right.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Are we ready for
number
2? Label some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful, or wrong. So again, this is like, I actually want to take the example. I got to be very careful how I word this. But if you take people who are supporters of a certain man who starts with a T, and we're told that it's some sort of emotional derangement disorder, because
those are the people that hate him, that they have that derangement. Yeah.
And we're labeled as horrible deplorables, you know what I mean? Or if you're taking the example of church, for instance, and you have certain emotions and certain, like if you have unhealed traumas, you can actually react to certain triggers in a way that's actually not like you and who you are. It's just like this energy and you don't know what to do with it. So they might label you as like demonic or possessed or something like that, when you're literally trying to deal with an unhealed trauma and you don't have any coping mechanisms on how to heal that trauma. And I've seen that happen quite often. Or if you're like sad all the time, or you're going through depression, and they're going to label you like, okay, well, it's sinful to stay in that state of mind. You need to be happy. But you're not allowing the person to literally heal themselves or getting to the bottom of what is causing that. So, or they'll tell you, you're feeling this, it's all in your head. Like if you start feeling like, if you're part of a cult, for instance, and you're feeling something's not right about this, my emotions are telling me something's not right about this, they'll like go at you and try to like gaslight you and tell you, no, it's in your head. Or, when you go to the doctor, some of the emotions you have towards certain things, your physician might tell you it's all in your head. Like, that you're wrong, you're completely wrong. You're not allowed to have whatever emotions you're feeling.
Well, that even goes back into gaslighting.
Exactly. It is very much gaslighting. They really go hand in hand. Those are the examples that I can come up with. But I've seen it a lot in the doctor's office, working in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
Just on a micro scale, in our culture, in our Afrikaans conservative culture, we are brought up like that. Certain emotions are not meant to be felt. Certain things, it's bad to feel that. So it's like part of how we grow up. Certain things you're not allowed to feel. Certain things are, if that's true, then it's all in your head. It's not true. You're not feeling that. That can't be true. That's pretty much on a mass scale as well, not
it
just in
also
a cult.
takes away your intuition too. It's also telling you, don't go by how you're feeling at all, because you're being told like, no, this is a fake emotion. Like, and no, you don't want to like sit in the emotion. Let's say you're depressed. You don't just want to sit there. You do want to do something about it. Absolutely. But you also have to get to the bottom of why you're feeling that way. But instead, a lot of us are told, here's a pill. For instance, if we're going into the whole medical part of that, or, you must be possessed because you can't seem to snap out of it, or all sorts of weird things. And if you go and really think about it, and you're being told this, it really makes no sense. Like, we have emotions because we're human beings, and it's okay to have emotions. It's what you do with the emotions. It's the action you take after the emotions, right?
Yeah, the emotions are it's what we feel.
Yeah.
And most of us have not acknowledged our emotions for many, many centuries, men and women alike. So they've been stunted. which is why we've had such crappy relationships with each other, and which is why we are able to be sucked away by the tide and be manipulated because we are not connected or grounded, if you will, or centered. So your emotions are the key for that. So it's so important to be able to acknowledge your feelings, heal them, allow the energy just to flow in the right, in a way that is right. So it's important that we do that, and really just start more and more acknowledging our own feelings, because most of us don't do that, men and women alike. It's easy to say women don't talk about their truth, and it's women talk more than men, much more than men. The problem is oftentimes we talk ourselves into a spinning circle. Men generally won't talk as much about it, but then they will suppress it and maybe oftentimes use addictions to cover that up. But at the end of the day, both are not dealing with the emotion. Both are not actually having constructive relationships from that, but it's so important just to be able to feel those emotions, acknowledge them, start working with them, talk, write in your journal. If you are new on the block to expressing yourself, I suggest you maybe see someone first before you start confronting people, because there really is an art. Confrontation is an art, that's the whole thing. A lot of people are very scared of confrontation because they think it's such a bad thing. And most people have this negative connotation that it's fists flying and screaming and shouting and windows smashing or whatever. That's not what a confrontation necessarily is, okay? It really is just confronting what you're feeling, confronting the person. So having a conversation, and it really is an art to actually do that in a way that is, and especially when it's difficult topics, right? And so in a way that we can talk about it, both parties heal through it, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. So when we aren't talking, and that's the thing, I'm very encouraging of talking directly to the person involved, or at least getting a therapist or someone you trust's opinion, not a family member, please. That's the worst thing you can do, is start hauling your family and your friends into fights with other family and friends and partners and things, because immediately then, again, that just gets the whole thing all wound up. Get someone independent that you talk to in a difficult time.
And I will say, too, I would encourage everybody to study and look at narcissistic personality disorder, because on top of that, Shanti, and this is the mistake that I've made, as a healthy-minded person, you go to people privately to resolve something, and what a narcissist will do is they'll turn it around and will have people start attacking you. They will get their flying monkeys that's important to talk to a therapist. It's important to talk to someone to help you through a situation like that, because if you are a healthy-minded person and you are dealing with a cult leader or someone in that position that perhaps maybe is a malignant narcissist or does have psychopathy, they are going to do everything they can, especially if you're bringing some truth to the situation that you want to resolve, to try to shut you down and destroy you. So I like you said, that to talk to like a therapist or something, because they can help you. Someone that's trained in mental science can help you navigate that better than making mistakes, thinking that somebody's just going to help you resolve something privately in a peaceful way, when sometimes there are people who that's not who they are. And so I like you brought that up, to talk to a therapist or someone that actually is trained in these mental sciences that can help you navigate that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important, because really at the end of the day, what I find is so important. It's how we view these situations. And any challenging situation is going to push your buttons. If you're in a challenging situation that is pushing your buttons, that is your opportunity to transcend. So rather than, and this is so easy for all of us out there to get caught up in fighting and arguing and stuff like that. it really is so important to understand, I'm not in this situation by accident. I took myself here for a very specific purpose or a reason. It might not be conscious to me right now, but what in me needs to see something in this situation? It's immediately that kind of, if it's a father that's abused you, for example, or you have you like this going back into child mode when stuff like this happens, that you feel out of your power. And it really is so important to be able to just sit with yourself and say, what do I need to gain through this situation? I often tell the story about, when that night that these guys came into my house and they smashed everything and, did whatever they needed to do. And for me, the whole thing was, as I left, I said, thank you, God, show me what I need to see. So every situation is an asking from the Creator or the source or God or the divine, what is the gift in this situation? Because if you're willing to see the gift in the situation, everything will start changing. Everything starts changing. Except, when we're looking at how bad it is, how terrible it is, when we think about God's law of correspondence, or the law of attraction, if you will, the more you focus on something, the more you're going to get it. So for those of us who've been subjected to these kinds of situations, where we have been emotionally, physically abused, etc., over time, let's look at, is this a pattern that continues in my life? Is it something that continues in various situations? And if the answer is yes, in more than 3 occasions, I'd say, well, then say to yourself, I'm the common denominator here. What do I need to do? What do I need to shift in me that no longer is going to draw this stuff to me? See, that for me is taking responsibility for our emotions, our spirit, our spiritual output, if you will. We need to see that everything is within our power to change it. It is within the power, depending on how we choose to actually look at situations, right? What do you say to that?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I teach that to those who book readings with me. Like, it will come right out in my reading. And I've noticed, even beyond my readings, people do have an addiction to want to draw in what they're drawing in too, because that's what they know. And misery loves company, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that's exactly it, Stephanie. It's what you're saying. It's like,
yeah,
we've been so conditioned to being felt like we are not enough or we are less than, through conditioning, not necessarily through abuse of parents or having ended up in the system or something,
Yeah.
That is really just the way humanity is being conditioned. And what we're seeing right now is a result thereof. So we really, it's just so good to be able to see, well, what am I, as you say, drawing in? And misery does love company. And many times it's things in ourselves that we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
But when we become aware of it, it changes. So it's very empowering. It really is, when it starts shifting and you start seeing the shifts, actually.
Yeah.
You start seeing it.
So I have to apologize quickly. Normally my dog, Robbie, only does this with Catherine Edwards.
Oh, is he like, he loves to hear our voice, doesn't he?
He must have a crush on Shanti and Stephanie too, because he's cleaning himself right now in his little boy areas, and it's very loud. So I'm going to mute myself, but I apologize if you guys.
I can't even hear it.
He usually only does this with Catherine Edwards. I usually have, but he came in the room. I can't. So he must think that Shanti and Stephanie's voice are very sexy right now. So, so I apologize if you guys hear that.
Maybe it's Morné's voice he likes.
Well, regardless, Robbie is a very happy boy, and
he's a very happy boy. But he is cleaning himself. He's cleaning his little boy bits right now.
He's having a lot of dog problems today. She's chomping on her bone. He's licking his man bits. I mean, it's a dog.
It's very loud too. So I apologize if you guys hear that.
I can hear it.
Good. Okay.
All good.
He just wanted to give us a good laugh.
I think it's a good time to quickly do the final advert for.
Yeah, let's do that.
See you in a minute.
Yay, welcome back, everybody. So, Steph, is there anything else from your bite-sized, chunky, emotional chunk that we can bite into?
Let's see. Teach emotion stopping techniques to prevent anger or homesickness. So it's like pretty much emotional numbness.
Mm-hmm.
I think we see that in a lot of different areas. I know the church, and my experience, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what we were kind of talking about, like not allowing emotions to really come up, allowing yourself to heal. A lot of parents actually use this technique, like, oh, quit your tears. Oh, stop with the crocodile tears. You should not be angry. I think I think a lot of us have gone through this in our childhood. And I'm not saying your parents are sitting there, abusive or anything like that. I think it's what they knew and how they handled things. I know I went through that a little bit myself. But it's pretty much making you become emotionally numb to feeling anything.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is a big thing that they also use when they MK Ultra, maybe celebrities, and their children. And it enables you to heal from anything because you're not addressing the emotions. If I'm saying
yeah. And I think that's what too. We have, people who have like anger management problems or anger issues. So if we live in a society where we were allowed to work through our anger, because you're angry there's a reason why you're angry. And if we were able to work through that, then we probably would have less anger. People who have anger management problems or rage problems, or because the emotions aren't going to go anywhere. They're just going to get buried and build up.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, it goes kind of very much hand in hand with the one we just went over. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that, but again, it's just like pushing you down, pushing you down, pushing you down. So you're left with all these emotions, but you don't know what to do with them. And then, yes, it's like, so for me, for instance, the result of what this has happened with me in my personal life is I became a very passive aggressive person. And I use myself as an example because I'm a human being and I just, I'm very imperfect. I'm not even close to it. But one of the things I've had to really work on is allowing myself to express my emotions in a very, manageable way, in a very productive way, in a very mature way, rather than stuffing it down, all of a sudden I explode like a ticking time bomb. You know what I mean? So it's one of those results is the passive aggressive behavior, or yeah, it can be like there's this explosive personality disorder. We see it in a lot of, especially like I've seen this in a lot of young boys who have maybe autism or ADHD, because boys tend to express their emotions through behavior, where girls tend to kind of smush it down a little bit when we're talking about young kids, right? So I've noticed this with a lot of kids that might be on the spectrum. Like the school system oftentimes will tell them, you can't express this emotion. But literally what's happening is it comes out in this explosive pattern, and then they're then shunned in the school system. And that was actually happening to my own child, where he was being told his emotions were false and that he should just push it down and he needs to be compliant. And what started happening was this pattern of no matter what he did, he would just explode. And so I got it to a point where I was like, no, you're okay to express emotions. It's what you do with it. So me taking him out of school and teaching him on my own how to express it. I mean, he still has difficulties sometimes, but because it is still an unhealed trauma, he's still got a lot of healing he's going to have to eventually do, because he was brutally ABUSC'd within the school system. I mean, it was pretty horrific, actually. He's able to now not have those explosive moments. He's able to now manage the emotion of anger a lot more productively. So you have to address your emotions somehow or another, whether it's productive or non-productive, right?
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't go anywhere until you do something with it.
And I think, what's so important, Stephanie, you were mentioning your son and, the suppression, emotional suppression that he's experienced. And again, that is so important, because really at the end of the day, that's all kids really get annoyed with, if you think about it. And I know this also just from years of doing this kind of thing. They need to be heard, and they need to be loved, and they need to be understood. Yeah. So, and that's really from their parents, right? And the minute you actually took him and started giving him that time on your own, that's when you started healing. Isn't that amazing? So just for us to take the time to listen, I think we've really, as parents, never been taught what our kids really need. I think, if we could take so much from the animal kingdom, right? I mean, what animal gives its baby up for to someone else to take care of after it's 2 or 3 weeks old, so it can go back to work? Type thing, if you think about that.
And you're right, because with dogs, I rescue dogs in India, and I learned from the vet in India that we just assume that dogs' puppies are taken from them, or they'll leave their puppies at a certain age. That's not true, guys. In the wild, the mom will never leave her puppies, ever.
Exactly. They become part of the same. They become part of the same pack or the same pride. They stay there,
We're very social animals, just like we are.
It broke my heart. How much trauma have we done to generations of dogs pulling puppies away from their mothers?
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know where Robbie's mother is. He was left she probably was killed. But when we rescued a mom and 4 of her puppies, brought them back, they all live in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and they still see each other. The mom, and every time I was telling Stephanie, every time the mom sees her puppies, now that they're grown dogs, she'll go and clean them all like a mother would. She goes and cleans them still. So that's true, Chantelle. Like the way that the animals, the mama bear, they take care of their young differently than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it really shouldn't be any different, because if you think about it, when a child is with its mom and nurtured and fed and, having that mollycoddling, which we've deprived ourselves of in the society, actually, which is why they've been able to instill these kind of things in schools and preschools and educate our kids, brainwash our kids to the way that they, to their pattern that they wanted. it's not really according to the parents anymore. Let's think about that, because all of these things, if we as parents were more present and connected with our kids and didn't put so much value on money, because now we need 2 homes or 2 cars, 2 jobs, 2 incomes. We've just kind of pushed ourselves all the time to survive in this world, create a very narcissistic world for ourselves, and then wonder where it all went wrong. And really, at the end of the day, this, in my opinion, is a big thing, is that if we as parents found a way that we could be more at home with our kids, spend more time with our kids, teach them more, love them more, not have the pressures on ourselves anymore that we have in this new generation, single moms, all of that stuff. I mean, the pressure is huge, not just on the mother, but on the child as well, So there's lots of things that we can look at, I think, that we can look at and that we should look at in terms of just maybe looking at how we can take care of, because we've been talking about this for a while on this channel, is, it's first starts with ourselves and then our communities and stuff like that. So this is how we take care of ourselves, our kids. If we take care of our little unit, we don't have these problems. This is the truth of the matter. We don't have to worry about anyone taking bite-sized chunks out of our children's consciousness and bodies and minds and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. And the way I've been trying to start healing the situation is, what did I need as a child when I was his when I was his age? We have to go back and think, what did I need the most at that age? And I've been trying to kind of I'm not a boy, obviously, so I have to kind of, I can't really relate in that regard, but, I have to really sit there and like try to relate to him. So he's having this and this and this emotion. What was I feeling at that age? And then if you start to go back and think, then you can start to, kind of put yourself on their level. Like, okay, so I needed this. I probably needed to do this at that age. They're going through a certain thing in their 2 years, or when they're 5 years old, they go through certain things. So you want to start to like really relate to, how you felt at that age. And that's been a big help for me throughout, trying to help heal him.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great way of doing it as well.
I think before we end, we definitely need to talk about the love bombing one, because that's a huge one that can, if you understand what love bombing is, it can prevent you from getting into a situation.
That's actually a really big one.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Because love bombing, it's, when somebody comes along, and this is typical of narcissists as well. This is what narcissists will do. So the big difference between like a narcissist and a normal person, not saying a normal person is perfect, no, but the biggest difference is, that people understand this, is people who have narcissistic personality disorder, whether that's covert, overt, malignant, they don't have a sense of self. And so they have to take their sense of self through what we call narcissistic supply from another person. They have to feed off of another person. So how do they hook and bait a person that they want to feed off of? Love bombing. And so what happens in the course of a relationship is you'll get love bombed by the narcissist. The narcissist will put you on a pedestal, their hero worship you. If it's in a love relationship, you'll think you found your soulmate, because they'll mirror you. They'll mirror your likes and interests. And then once that they have done that enough, they'll then knock you off of the pedestal and start mentally and emotionally abusing you. And then once there's some sort of reconciliation, they'll love bomb again. And so it's this pattern. And so if we understand what love bombing looks like from the get-go as a human being, we can kind of maybe even prevent and put some boundaries up. It's one thing to give a friend a compliment. Hey, Steph, I love your necklace today. Your eyes look beautiful today. You have great makeup on. But another thing, love bombing, is like consistently telling someone how amazing they are, just over and over and over and over again. It's almost like a form of spellcasting in a way, to get people into this trance of really supporting this psychopath, and that's what cult leaders do. So that's how people are always like, how did somebody end up in a cult? Well, usually it starts with love bombing, and anyone's susceptible to it if they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been vulnerable, if you've been someone that hasn't been heard your whole life, if you've been someone that has been bullied, and then you've got this other person around that's very charismatic, that's love bombing you, you all of a sudden unintentionally become like a slave to that person. Does that make sense?
They also
Exactly.
use it in objects too. They'll buy you things, buy you things, buy you things, because then their energy is now attached to that item. And then when suddenly they do something that goes against your morals, they expect you to go along with them because they bought you this, this, and this. And that has been actually something I've dealt with my entire life. I'm not going to mention a particular person. I dealt with this since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. But it was like, well, I did that for you. Well, I did this for you. But, you know, that's the thing. I can't be bought. You can't buy me. Money doesn't speak anything to me. So, you know, you got to put those boundaries up. And I've had multiple friends in my past buy me things. And it's like, it gets to the point where it starts to get kind of like, there's something wrong here. Why do they keep doing this for me? But there's an ulterior motive behind it. They do the same exact thing in these cults. They do the same thing in, you know, all these different organizations where they bait you in. It's like the worm on the hook for a fish when you go fishing.
I mean, look at it this way. They'll use love bombing in these big organizations or small organizations to get someone hooked in, to sometimes get them involved in illegal practices. And all of a sudden they're stuck in a situation and they can't turn on the person because they're stuck in it too. Love bombing is one of the most dangerous things out there. You have, and again, this is not, don't stop complimenting people. Don't stop saying, hey, how are you? Look so beautiful today. How you doing? Don't stop. Love bombing is very different than just giving someone a genuine compliment. It starts
to get like suspicious. Like you'll start to feel there's a suspicion behind it. You just have to use your gut.
But maybe not if you're not used to it. Because the first time I experienced it, I thought, oh my God, this person is my soulmate. This person gets me, because I didn't know what love bombing was. And so sometimes if you feel like you've been swept away by a person, you know, in a normal situation, normal relationships, they build over time, right? There's time of goodwill that passes through getting to know each other, whether it's friendship, colleagues, love relationships, whatever. But if someone just swoops in out of nowhere and then has lured you in with blowing smoke up your ass, basically to the point where you think this person is magically some part of your soul or something, then there's a problem there. There's definitely a problem there. They're doing that on purpose to bait you in. Again, because if you look at it, as I said, why do they do this? Well, typically people who have narcissistic personality disorder, which are most cult leaders, they don't have a sense of self. And so they have to feed, it's a form of vampirism. They have to feed off of their narc supply. They see you as a narc supply. So they'll mirror you in a lot of ways. They'll all of a sudden start taking on your personality traits or your likes and dislikes. And, you know, it's okay to have different hobbies from your partner. It's okay to have different opinions on things with your friends. That's normal. But the love bombing process is also mirroring you to get you to feel like you've been swept away. You don't want to get swept off your feet, guys. That fairy tale stuff of being swept off your feet, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. You know, if you can start, people, and I would suggest anybody watching who's not familiar with this, there's so many videos out there, documentaries about love bombing, different psychiatrists talking about what love bombing is. I would absolutely 100% go and study this, because if everybody understood what that looked like, we would have less people stuck in emotionally abusive situations.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And again,
I just wanted to add, with the step before, they're enforcing guilt and shame and unworthiness. If you're in a state of feeling unworthy, it's easy to get love bombed, so to say. So at the end of the day, if you're in that state of feeling unworthy, it's easy to be that. So, but if you're in that place where you know your beauty, then honestly, I don't think even you will attract somebody like that in your life. And when you do, you would see, this person is just kissing ass.
Yeah,
so it's very important that we find our own worthiness.
Becomes very transparent.
Yes.
It really does. Becomes very transparent when you've risen above that nonsense stuff, whatever. You can just smell the BS a mile away.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can. I listened to one. There's Dr. Romney. She's this therapist. She has a huge channel where she focuses on narcissism. And in one of her interviews, she said, "Charming people scare me." I'm paraphrasing. She's like, "I don't like charming people because a lot of times these people come across as very charming." And she's like, "Give me the socially awkward person at any day, because the charming person, there's something they're up to." So you just have to understand. And you're right. If you are solid in yourself and who you are as a person, then the love bombing's you're not going to get caught in the trap of love bombing. You're not going to get swept away. They can say all that stuff to you. You'd be like, "Oh, thanks," but you're not going to get swept away and pulled into their web, right? They're going to have to go to the next person because you're not falling for it. And if someone is love bombing you, I'm not saying you aren't an awesome person. Of course you are, but they're doing it in a very malicious way. And I know one of them was threatened friends and family. I'm going through that right now. Like, that is part of that flying monkey situation where you get all stuck in this situation of this group think, and all of a sudden things can get violent. And so I just really hope that but the love bombing is where we notice it right away. And if things can get chopped off, if you have that, what is it? Knowledge is power, knowledge protects, and knowledge is infinite. But let's talk about knowledge protecting. If you understand what that is as a human being, whether you've been through it before yourself and you learn through experience, or you learn through studying other people's experiences or other doctors out there that are talking about this, then you will be able to stop so many unfortunate situations from happening in your life with people who are not here for your highest good.
Yeah, absolutely.
The biggest thing is boundaries. And that's not just for those who are being malicious toward you, like outwardly malicious toward you and trying to suck your energy and like being obvious about it. It's actually those who are being very discreet about it as well. Like, protect your space, protect your bubble of you, right? People have to earn your trust. You don't just give your trust away. That's giving your power away. Just because someone buys you a bunch of stuff, that's not earning trust. That's buying you. And money is what? The root of all evil. We're obviously seeing
the love of money. Yeah, the love of money. Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of these corporations and these cults get people sucked in through the promise of money, through greed. They find that wound through that and they go in and they get you stuck in a situation where you can't leave, or you're going to get turned in for crimes, or this is, so this is happening everywhere, guys. This isn't just, these tactics aren't just used in churches or spiritual centers, or it's literally everywhere. It's happening in corporations. It's happening on YouTube. It's happening on Rumble, BitChute. It's happening on the media. It's happening in education. It's happening in sports clubs. It's happening at gyms. It's happening everywhere. And so you have to understand what this looks like so that you can try your best to put that boundary up.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that's really what it is at the end of the day. No one is criticizing anyone. So I always like to be very sensitive about saying the sort of things that I do, because I never want to say to any of you out there that it's your fault that any of this is going on in your life. It really is just about being aware that if it's going on, these are the things to look at, and the truth shall set you free. But first, it's going to piss you off. None of us like to believe we've been sucked in. None of us like to believe that we are attracting or corresponding to these energies or these people or situations. But if it's in your environment and if it's in your world and if it's creating havoc for you, then yes, you have. And that would be the first thing, is just to gently decide to either sit with yourself or to start speaking to someone who can help you. So on that beautiful note, we are out of time again. But is there anything you girls would like to say just before we end off and say goodbye for now?
If you find yourself in a situation where this is all resonating, you're like, holy shit, I've been manipulated. I know sometimes those thoughts can get very dark because you feel like you've been fooled. I get that. I just want people to understand there is help out there. There are a lot of people trained to help you with this stuff, help you to deprogram, help you to maneuver through it. So I know how debilitating it can be when you realize what's happening. And there are I know there are bad therapists, but there are also really good therapists out there, trauma specialists, who will help you get through whatever is going to come your way from leaving a group. Do expect the smear campaigns. You have to expect that when you leave a group, but there's help out there. There are people out there that will help you navigate that. And so please don't feel like you have to deprogram alone. You don't have to deprogram alone. So there is help out there. Your life is valuable. You are valuable. You wouldn't be here on this earth if you weren't valuable. So just know that there is help out there.
Absolutely.
And don't feel shame either if you've been lured in like that, because it can happen to the best of anybody. And it's a great opportunity to see exactly where your wounds might be, and a good opportunity to figure out where you need to really truly start to heal yourself so that it doesn't happen again, and you start attracting those who are on the same vibration as you going forward.
Absolutely. That's the only way. Work on ourselves. Hold each other's hands while we're doing it. Take care of each other by being kind. Just being kind is just really cool and gentle, you know. And on that note, I think we've spoken about everything for this week. So I want to say to you guys, thank you so much for joining us again here on Aquarius Rising Africa. Always wonderful to see you. God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves. And if you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. We're on Facebook, we're on BitChute, we're on Twitter, we're on Telegram. So follow us there. Lots of stuff going on at the moment, so we'll keep you updated. God bless you all. Mwah. See you very soon.
Bye.